Hello, gentle marketers. Welcome to episode 95 of the Gentle Business Revolution podcast, the show where we talk about marketing your business by disrupting the current marketing paradigm and changing it to a gentler approach, one that's based on empathy and kindness. As always, I'm Sarah Croce. I'm the host here, and you know that you're in the right place if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur or change maker who is looking for a better way to market your business and connect with your clients. Or you might also be a marketing impact pioneer. So that's someone who's working maybe in marketing in an organization that does business for good. Today's conversation fits the first P of the Gentle Marketing Mandala. We're back to the first one. And if you're here regularly, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of the Gentle Marketing Mandala. And if you're new here and this is your first time, first of all, welcome. And second of all, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, but you can download your one-page marketing plan with the gentle marketing version of the 7 Ps of marketing at sarahsanacroce.com/one page. That's the number 1 and then page. And yes, that comes with 7 email prompts to really help you reflect on these different Ps for your business. Before we dive in, allow me again to tell you about the next Gentle Business Circle call that's coming up on July 14th. And I'd like to invite you to join us for free and see if this is the community that you've been waiting for. So the circle is a hive mind of gentle marketers who get together on a monthly call to discuss gentle marketing and business questions. So imagine being authentically you. You show up as your true self in your marketing, not some prescribed guru version of who you should be in order to get customers. Imagine doing the right thing. Your integrity really is everything, and your clients love you for that and seek you out because they trust you to always tell them the truth. Imagine doing good and getting paid. Your clients resonate with you and tell you, it's you I want to work with. And finally, imagine contributing to making this world a better place. You're growing a business that financially supports you, helps others, and makes an impact in this world. That's our common goal in the Gentle Business Circle. The Circle is an intimate and global community of gentle marketers. It's a calm space to hang out with like-minded, conscious entrepreneurs and help each other build our business and grow our impact. By exchanging knowledge, skills, and experiences, we develop our individual and collective competency, cooperation and trust, and our professional identity. Our next circle call is coming up on Wednesday, July 14th. And if you'd like to try it out and check out the details at sarahsanacroce.com/circle. And then just email me at sarah@sarahsanacroce.com and let me know that you'd like to join us for free this time. We'd love to have you. All right, so today, as I said, is all about the first P of the Gentle Marketing Mandala, the one that stands for passion. And our topic today is all around the power of asking the right questions. And my guest today, Paul Harvey, built his business around 5 questions. Originally living and working in London, Paul has a background and over 30 years of experience working in product development and marketing. From an early interest in performance where he completed professional acting and singing courses, he progressed into public speaking and has since trained in coaching, public speaking, and professional leadership. Since his move to the north of Scotland in 2004, he built a career as a business advisor and coach. His current focus is on his Life, Passion, and Business podcast, created to support inspiration and passion for life and business. He also runs virtual events and creates resources to enhance life experiences and develop the human spirit. Our conversation really revolves around these 5 deep questions that Paul came up with. And he asks them on his podcast. And I was actually on his podcast just recently. So he asked me those questions. And then today I kind of said, well, let's turn the mic and let me ask you about these questions. So the 5 questions are: what are you passionate about? What does success mean to you? What is your contribution to the world? What is the one question you wish people would ask you? And the final one, what is the meaning of life to you? And I added another one and asked him how these questions help us in our business. So you could probably tell that these are questions that we ask ourselves on this podcast as well. I asked them in the book. There's a chapter just about the definition of success in the Gentle Marketing Revolution book. So I say we dive in and talk to Paul Harvey. Hey, Paul, good to speak to you again. Is it the same week or last week?
I think it might be last week, Sarah, which is great. Okay. Yeah, it's good to talk to you again too. It's a good day.
Yeah. Like I said in the intro, we are turning the mics, and I was on your podcast with your 5 questions, and now I get to ask you the 5 questions. And I'm putting this under the the passion P. So I have this for gentle marketing, and the first one is actually stands for passion. So I think that's a pretty good fit for those 7 questions that you have. And then the second P is about personal power. And that's why I got it wrong, because it would also fit under personal power. It's like understanding who you are and what your personal power is.
Well, that's what these questions are about.
That's what it is about.
It's very much an exploration of the self. It's
exactly.
Like, people say, can they come on my podcast talking about their business? And I go, no. Yeah. And they kind of look at me straight and go, no, I don't care about your business. I care about you.
Yeah.
And that's what life passion business is about. It started as that. It's always been an exploration of the person, because it came out of the fact that in 2017, my father died. And he died. He was an old man. He was 89 years old, and he did not want to be 90. He was very clear about that. He was really fed up. And I knew he was ill, but I didn't know he was that ill. And he didn't have anything wrong with him per se, but he just wasn't functioning properly. And then he just keeled over 2 weeks before for his 90th birthday, and it was like, we had plans to go and see him on that. And of course we didn't, obviously, because he died. But it was that recognition that he had really got so fed up, so disillusioned with living and with life. I mean, he never really got over my mother's death 20 years before. But when I look at his life, his whole life journey, he was a man of the war. He grew up during World War II. He found his mother's body when he was 10. She died of some kind of attack or something. I don't know what. It wasn't war related. But he had a rough childhood, a hard journey throughout his entire life. And I don't think he ever really made choices for himself, a lot of choice. He literally just fell into things and was often miserable. And when I think about the time there were some times he was happy, but not all the time. And I suddenly realized, I had the dawning realization that I had very similar traits to my father. We are chips off these blocks, however we look at them. And I look at the back of my hands and I can see the back of my father. I can see my father's hands in the back of my hand. And it's like, whoa, I really do have very similar traits. And it was a realization in 2017 that for all intents and purposes on the outside, my wife and I have disagreements over this on some level, but for all intents and purposes, on the outside, I was living a perfectly normal life. I was doing everything I needed to do. I was keeping bread on the table. I was doing all the things I needed to do. But inside, I was dying a bit. I didn't actually care much about me. I wasn't doing enough for me. And I've coined it as a phrase, as I didn't actually care whether I lived or died. I wasn't actually seeking to kill myself. It wasn't as though I was looking for suicide, but I saw no value in what I was doing or anything else other than, I think my value at the time was the family project, was, bringing up my son. That was it. And once that was over, I didn't really know what was going to happen to life, really. So I recognized all these things and myself, I feel really about this. So what's the answer? So I thought about various things I could do to kind of reconcile this. And the idea came up to start a podcast. It's like, well, perhaps I should do that. I could ask people that very question, how do you make this life bloody thing work?
Isn't that often the case that podcasters start because they are actually the ones wanting to learn something or having conversations with other people and kind of like reaching out to the world? So
yeah, absolutely.
Like that's the case for you.
Exactly why I started it. So I started reaching out to people. So I started very locally with people I knew, a few people I knew. And the conversations were really interesting, and they started to feed me. And it took me, I mean, I don't know if you had the podcaster's dilemma. I mean, I think it's quite standard. The idea for a podcast happens. The reality of birthing a podcast takes ages. It takes, a couple of quite a few months to actually get the confidence to put it out there. Eventually, I had to make myself a real deadline in the end, because I had, I think, 5 interviews in the can, but I didn't want to let them go. I just couldn't do it.
Right.
And eventually, I launched it in January 2018.
So, how many people have you asked these questions since then? How many episodes does the podcast?
Well, I'm up to about 180 something episodes.
Oh,
but
wow.
then they're not all those people. Some of those are me. But I reckon I've easily spoken to 150 people, probably 160.
Yeah.
And I have to say, not every one of them made the podcast. Some of them, I did have some conversations that I thought that really didn't make the cut. Mm-hmm. You made the cut. You did it right.
Check.
No, but what I'm getting at really is that some people, though, okay, so the reason is about, the whole idea is you come onto my podcast, and what I want to hear from you is the distillation of your life, what it is, the factors of your life, how you boil it all down into this person that is, Paul Harvey, Sarah, or Sarah Santa Cruz, how this person embodies in the world, in your life, in your business, and everything. So it's that process really for me.
Right.
That's why it's so exciting about it.
Let me ask you this, like, we are both, of a certain age, let's just say. And I feel like
these possibly mean I'm not a day over 21, 58.
Like these questions, if I had answered them, let's say even like 10 years ago, the answers would have sounded very different. Like, what is there like an average age of your podcast guest, or is that just my assumption that you have to be of a certain age to actually grasp the depths of these questions?
No, it's an ism. You're just being ageist. That's all. It's just an ism.
Okay, good.
No, look, I guess end of the day, I don't think the age is actually relevant. I think it comes to us all at a certain time, and I think some people will never grow up to answer those questions. Mm-hmm. So I have had 2 guests on the show who, my youngest up until last year was 21, and I had a 17-year-old approach me this year, and I said to him, I look, you're 17, really, you're significantly younger than me. It's going to be a very weird conversation. He goes, no, I want to come on your show. And I went, why? He said, because I've written this book. I've written this book about personal development. And I went, okay, I've got to, all right, okay. Because when I heard a 17-year-old tell me they'd written a book about that, I thought to myself, oh my God, I've got to have them on the program.
Did it make the cut?
Even if it's just for me and him to have a conversation, just to kind of go, look, maybe you need to go and think about it again. But he was brilliant. He was actually brilliant. Yeah. His name's gone straight out of my head. I'm sorry. I really should. I will let you know.
Send me the link and we'll put it in the show notes.
And he's written a book, and I think you've got to take it as someone who is 17-year-old doing this. But what I would say about it, he has thought long and hard about it. And I think the difference between young people now than when we were that age is the availability of information.
Yeah.
If I wanted to learn about personal development or anything, I had to go to the library, and it wouldn't have been there.
No.
Yeah. I mean, when I discovered personal development when I was in my 30s, and it was an utter revelation to me to walk into a bookshop and discover this range of books. I mean, I think the US have had them well before the UK did. Right. Yeah. So I discovered that there was this possibility that I could change, and I had no realization of that. Whereas Jonathan Nazario, or something like that, his name is. I mean, he has been looking at YouTube since he was 10, and he's been looking at speaking and those sort of things. And that's what he's interested in, public speaking and presentation.
I think it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. And there is such thing as wise souls. I think they're just wiser way earlier than the average person. And so I totally believe. Obviously then, his book is probably not for the 50-year-olds. Like you said, it's probably more for the 20-year-olds who are also interested.
I think it touches quite some interesting subjects because, I mean, he sees the future as quite dystopian. So for him, it's it's him working out his sense of where the world is going and a way of avoiding that. So I think it's quite, and what is amazing about him, he wrote a book and published it on Amazon, and he didn't tell his parents about it, and only discovered it. They only discovered it because a friend saw it and reviewed it and told them about it.
Wow.
And this is a young Black guy in the States. So I think it's just like everything about this conversation was amazing.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It is. But, let's not focus on those things. And they are unusual. They are rare. You're right. A lot of people of older years come to these conversations, I think. And it is about the journey. That's the point. I think the whole point of Life, Passion and Business, it's about being on the journey and discovering what you discover on that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would you say is the power? Yeah, it's the journey, but what is the power to ask yourself?
There are 5 questions. The 5 questions based on what is your passion? What are you passionate about? And how long have you had that? Where has it come from? What's the story behind that passion? How does it manifest in your world and your life? What is your measure of success? Now, success is a journey. And as we start out our lives and our careers, there are obvious successes that we have to hit. Learning to walk is a good start. Talking's not a bad idea. Those are early successes that we have to kind of hit. But then once we hit puberty and everything else, then the successes start becoming more structured. It's like learning and getting a job, finding a partner or finding some kind of relationships, friendships, earning some money, getting some resources together. And then, society kicks in then and says, you need a good job, you need to get your car, you need the house. Even the
partner is a society defined.
Of course it is. Success, of course it is. But I mean, it is. Partners and children is a society determination of success. Mm-hmm. I think partnership and friendship is probably a natural human thing, Yeah. But the idea of settling down and producing a family is a society thing, a society responsibility. Mm. So all those things, I mean, the US has the American dream, which is another success model that a lot of people fall into. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people also fall into family or cultural success. So lots of young, people from Indian families or from Asian families, East Asian families, will have this idea of you've got to get into a profession. The family says you must be a doctor or a lawyer or a solicitor, those sort of things. Right. So those are all the kind of cultural things that push success onto us. And people follow those things because they know nothing else. And then suddenly they get to a certain age and think, God, this sucks. This is not what I think is successful. So what was it for you? You didn't think you get away with just no. I'm very happy with that. I'm very happy. No, it's an ongoing question for me, and I have to be prepared to answer it. And I think the answer does change a bit. So when I first started, of course, the answer was when I get my first car and those sort of things. Right. And buying a house was a success factor for us. Mm-hmm. Doing the house, having a child, I guess. Having a child wasn't a big success factor for us because it was a surprise. We weren't expecting it. But when he arrived, it was like, wow, this is nice. So, I wouldn't say they were society success factors. I mean, there's me. I've always been a bit of a maverick, like my wife and I lived together for years and I never wanted to get married or never had any plans to get married. But when we were having a child, she said, I really would like to be married. And I said, not bothered really. So we got married in secret and we told no one and we don't celebrate the day. So it's like, we did the society, we did the legal thing, if you like, but we didn't do it in any format way. In fact, we recognize the day every, oh, look, it's our wedding anniversary. Oh, well, there you go. So, I mean, that's kind of thing. But success over the last few years has been much more about me living a joyful life, particularly since starting the podcast. I've recognized the importance of me, about this life is for me to experience and for me to do. It's not for other people. And yes, I will serve other people, but end of the day, selfishly, it's about me. Mm-hmm. And that's success. So success is exercising every day. Success is making sure that I get good sleep, have good conversations like this one. That's success to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, money comes in there somewhere. I have to earn some money occasionally, but that's nice too. But it's not my primary driver. Put it that way.
Not the end goal.
Yeah. No. When you actually know what your success model is, that's the point. If you take the time to decide what your success model is, then chasing that promotion may not be what's important to you. Recognizing that getting that promotion means you working more in the company you're working in. Is that what you actually want? I mean, you might want all the glory that comes with that promotion, but do you want the extra hours that means? Mm-hmm. Success comes with a price, and you have to decide where that sits.
It's interesting that you had that kind of pause and reflection in 2017. I'm ready to bet that a lot of people had this in 2020, where
I'm sure they did.
It was kind of like being helped by the pandemic. It's like, do you ever pause and reflect? Well, now is the time.
Yes. I mean, you can imagine it, can't you? Because I know what London life was like. I used to live in London till 2004. And that's why I moved out of London to Scotland. And prior to that, the reason we moved out of London is because we had a late child. We didn't really plan to have a child in our life, and circumstances happened, and it happened. And we were delighted. It was like another story. But anyway, you could find it on the podcast if you're really that interested. But we recognized that the road and the place we lived in, while it was fine, it was a beautiful place to live, probably wasn't the best place to bring up a child. It wasn't the kind of upbringing that we wanted to, because we would be talking like childcare, rushing around. It would have been all that kind of stuff. And we thought a slower pace of life, more community would be better. Yeah. So that's why we moved to Scotland, 600 miles away, to a community, to a small town in Scotland.
So sounds like a big move for
it was a massive
guy
move.
From London. Yeah.
It was a massive move. And for me, it was also about breaking away from a job I was never going to leave. So it was brilliant. Yeah. But here's one of the things. I was going out at 7 a.m. and coming back at 7 p.m. I would never have seen my son for the first couple of years if I didn't break that. Mm-hmm. And the difference was I left that, and that's what people have suddenly noticed, isn't it? People in the lockdown time have been at home with their children, putting their kids to bed, getting them up with them in the morning, and not chasing out to work or chasing home.
Right.
It's going to take a bit of adjustment to go back to commuting 5 days a week, isn't it?
It does. I mean, I was discussing with someone the other day that even the kids, to them, 1 year and year and a half is their lifetime. So they're now used to having both parents at home. Yeah. To them, it's going to be like a big shock to say, where is mom and dad?
Yeah. How comes I'm at childcare again? So those kind of conversations are going to start happening. Yes. Fascinating time. Fascinating time of change. Mm-hmm.
So then, all right. So we're at the second question. Let's move on to the
contribution.
Third question.
Contribution. So what is your contribution to the world? What is it you contribute to the world and to yourself? How do you look after yourself? Self-care. So many people don't look after themselves. Self-care is one of those. Yeah, I know we say we do, but often we actually don't. We don't get enough sleep. We might drink too much, maybe eat too much, not work out properly, not exercise properly. That's contribution to the self. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's contribution to the world. So obviously we all contribute to our family or the wider world. Now, for me, my big contribution is always going to be the podcast, because I know I'm sharing something which is very valuable. And the things that I bring out of that podcast and the tools that we're developing to help people find their purpose, passion, and what they actually want. So that's my contribution. Mm-hmm. And everyone I speak to has something in their contribution. I mean, the one amazes me recently was Dmitry Badyov. He's a Russian luthier. He makes violins. And his contribution to the world is creating unique instruments. It's just like, But listening to him talk about it, it's his contribution, because he talks in color. That's all I can say. I can only say he talks in color. You listen to the words he uses, and I just want to listen to him all day. I can't say that again, Dimitri.
That's nice.
But that's contribution to me. That's it. How do we contribute to the world?
Yeah, and I like that you kind of divide it into outside and inside, right? Because we can't deplete ourselves by always only giving and without receiving. And so the receiving is the self-care. Like, let me put on my own mask first before I go out there. Because again, maybe the society kind of makes you think you have to, contribute and leave behind a legacy and all these things. But if you don't take care of yourself,
do you know why they say put your own mask on first?
You mean
what they say in an airline? Do you know why they say that?
Oh,
They never explain it, why they say
I think
it.
because otherwise you die before you can.
Well, you don't die actually, but what happens is you get confused. But it takes like 25 seconds before your brain is fudged and you're still alive and still awake, but you can't determine what to do. You've got no control. So it's like, that must be awful. Like, I know I need to be doing something, but I can't think what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's confusion because you're missing oxygen.
Yeah. Suddenly. Fascinating, isn't it, really? But yeah, own oxygen mask on first. And it's a really, really valid thing in life. Like,
it's like take care of your own body.
Yeah. And I heard some stats somewhere recently that only 90% of the world or people actually take proactive control of their lives. Only 10% of people, 90% don't. 90% of people literally just do nothing in terms of proactively moving their life forward.
And what did they mean by that? Health-wise only?
Every way. So most people just follow the path. Most people just get up in the morning, do their work and follow the path. They don't actually proactively manage or think about how to move their life forward in any way at all.
Again, it's the rat race, it's the trends, it's the that's just how it's been. And that's why this COVID thing was such a blessing, I think, in disguise for many people, because they're like, oh my God, what's going on?
Well, of course, some people didn't. Some people just dived into box sets, didn't they, and drank a lot.
Yeah.
That's what they did. Sadly, unfortunately, but we
some maybe, but
well, as I say on the podcast, life is a quest from the cradle to the grave. How we choose to do that quest is entirely of our own making.
Right. Yeah.
And that's it. We choose to accept the quest whichever way we want to. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Other people are quite content to drink themselves to oblivion.
Yeah.
But I can't, and there's no critique on either of those things. That's the choice. That's the point. There ain't no right or wrong way to do this life. You just have to make a choice how you want to do it.
Well, that's the thing, though. I don't know if they actually choose that. I'm not sure they ever think about it. And had they a choice, if they would still choose that. But that's another conversation.
Well, it is. And it's an interesting conversation. I mean, circumstances put them into that place.
Yeah.
But I mean, I always love that comment. And it's been said to me by many people on the podcast, life happens for you, not to you.
Mm-hmm.
These things are put there for you to experience and to rise above.
Right.
And so the person who is drinking gets that journey. And I know it's nasty, but they get the options to step out of it. Things turn up. She's not a podcast guest, but she was on the event. She was on the spirituality event I did last year. Pamela Grimm, her name is. And she was narcotics, and a heavy user of narcotics up to 1993, I think it was. And literally, she had landed herself a job in a hospital, and she knew that she was going to be drug tested at some stage. So she went to HR and said, look, I'm a narcotics user and an alcoholic. She said that, but I need to let you know that, and I need some help. So luckily she found the right person. Mm-hmm. So they took her in. They said, okay, well, now you've told us when we drug test you, we won't sack you, but you need help. So they helped her. But, so what was it that made her ask that question at that point in time? Because she hadn't before.
Right.
For years, she had gone on and on and on. And suddenly something clicked in her and made her change her mind and take action.
Right. Yeah. Took a lot of courage, I'm sure.
I'm sure it did. Mm-hmm. I mean, her story is just amazing because she met someone at Alcoholics Anonymous who said, you don't need to be here. You need to be in Narcotics Anonymous. So she said, okay, well, how do I get this? Well, look, here's my number. Give me a call and I'll call you back where the next meeting is. But they're all over town. I go to all of them. Oh, okay, then, she says. So she calls and she gets an answer phone. And then he called her back and told her where to meet her. So she met him at this place, and they were arrived together, went into this Narcotics Anonymous, and it was just what she needed. She never ever saw him again, ever. And he was supposed to go to all these places,
right?
And she phoned the number, and the number didn't work. So
Meant to be.
who was this guy? Who was this angel that helped her out? Because she never found him ever again.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the three base questions. And then I have another question, which I tend to, originally it was put into the podcast to give people an opportunity to say what they liked. Because one thing I was conscious of is people get on a show like ours, they have a conversation, and then at the end of it, they go, I wish I'd said so-and-so. Oh, I forgot to say something. So I gave them that.
Like me in my book.
Yeah, you did. You in your book. Yeah, I had to edit that in, didn't I? Oh, did I say that? Mind you, I got carried away, didn't we? I was all over the place on that podcast. Yeah, so it was about giving people an opportunity to say something. So I used to phrase the question, what's the one thing I haven't asked you that I should have done? Which always kind of made people go, ooh, what does that mean? But I've since rephrased it a bit because my wife hated that question. She said it needs to be different. So I've since rephrased it. What's the one thing you want people to ask you? Or I phrase it as what's the one thing you want people to ask themselves? And it depends on the guest how I ask that. But it is interesting. It's like we all have our pet topic. We all have a subject that we like to talk about. And when you have a feed-in question like that, it's really nice when someone says to you, oh, yeah, Paul, tell me about your podcast. Oh, right, now you're asking. Yeah. So that's
is it always self-promotional or like, for example, right now I said the book because I forgot to mention that, but actually in answer to that question, I said, well, actually for right now, since I've been hiding so long that, I'm a hippie turned business coach, what I really wanted to talk about is my upbringing. So does it always end up being, some kind of self-promotional thing? Like, yeah, ask me about my podcast or ask me about my book.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on the guests. I mean, some guests are use it as a self-promotional question.
Right.
And some people will use it as a more searching question. I mean, okay. Some people said...
So what would it be for you?
It depends on when you ask it, I guess. But I mean, if I was looking to use it in terms of how I want the 5 questions to be used,
right?
I would say, how often, when do you actually sit down and ask yourself the important questions of yourself? When do you actually make time to answer these questions? I think that's very valid.
Okay.
And it is valid. When is it? Do we actually take time? I know I said about under self-care, but it's like, when am I actually going to sit down and take the time to decide what I want to do with the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
I have another podcast guest who's actually a friend, actually. She runs end-of-life planning. She runs courses on end-of-life planning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's morbid. Actually, it's not morbid at all. End-of-life planning is really exciting because when you sit down and recognize that I'm 58 years old this year, I possibly could have 30 to 50 years left on this planet. What do I want to do with them?
Right.
Because there are some things that I will not be able to do in, say, 20 years' time. So maybe I'll start planning to do them now, because unless you start planning to do some of these things, not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah?
I remember this book about, I can't remember, something like 10 dates or something like that. And it was, the idea was to have these kind of discussions with your partner. So it would be about, some things were about your relationship to money, but also how you want to, live the rest of your life. So like these conversations that don't just happen on a date night because they're like deeper. And I really appreciated kind of the guidance of this book that I'm like, yeah,
well,
let's
I'll ask the question of you, and it's a tough one to answer, but have you had the discussion with your partner, what you want to happen if you died?
Yeah, no, never.
No.
Not yet.
No, but why shouldn't you have it? I mean, you don't know what the outcome of tomorrow is going to be.
Right.
We just don't know, do we?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, and it's like, I never asked that question. And I know it feels morbid. It does. But, we have asked those questions here now because Jane's in our life anyway. So we have asked them. It's like, well, what do you want to do? What happens?
Yeah.
So my son knows what we want. And the beauty of doing that thing, is that when the worst does happen and someone does leave, you don't actually have to think about what they wanted.
Right.
Because it can cause real family rifts and arguments.
Yeah.
They didn't want that. Yes, they didn't. It can be really easy. Look, there's a plan. This is what they want. It means everybody can get on. They can implement the plan. They can get on with grieving and getting on with remembering the good things about you rather than working out what to do. So that's the beauty of having an end of life plan.
Right. Yeah, I know it from my parents. So we've had the conversation with my parents, and it does give me a certain relief, like, that makes it easier because now I know what they want. And there's not going to be any arguments with my sister because we just know, okay, this is what we have to do now.
Precisely. Absolutely. And also the practical thing. So, in this house has a complicated heating system. If I leave, my wife will be in trouble with the heating system in here.
I was like, how are we connecting the dots with the heating system and you're passing? Okay. I'm relieved.
And a lot of people have similar issues. Like, it's like a friend of mine said, like her husband died. And for the first time in like 2 weeks, she was on her own. She sat down to watch television and realized she didn't know how to
turn on the TV.
Because there were like 4 or 5 remotes. She didn't know which one worked. And she ended up throwing one of them against one and breaking it. It's like, she said, like, and she was angry at her partner for not telling her how to use the bloody TV.
Yeah.
So, but all right, I know this is daft. Is this about passion? But it's just about those things, about taking the time to think about what you want in life and what you want for your loved ones and what you want for people around you.
So let's bring it back to business, because it is, life and business. So we covered life. How do these questions help us in our business on a daily?
Well, for starters, when you understand who you are, what you want, what your success pattern is, what your contribution is, what it is you want to achieve in your life, the business is probably one of those places where you're going to express that.
Right.
So it allows you to, first of all, look at your business and does it fit with all the things that I want to be in and do in life? Mm-hmm. A lot of people find themselves in businesses that were great when they started them, but suddenly at a certain point in time, they kind of go, this doesn't work for me so much now.
Yeah.
That hit me because in 2010, I suddenly realized in 2010 that marketing was killing the planet.
Right.
I suddenly recognized that, we were consuming this planet to wherever. And I realized that I could no longer do marketing for certain clients. I had to start drawing back out of that.
Right.
And so I made a switch from that point onwards, where I would only work with certain kind of clients, people who were doing something proactive or positive to the world.
Right.
And I've made a switch now in the last 2 months. I've actually actively taking, marketing went on hold last year because of COVID anyway, but I'm actively not taking any more marketing clients on. My marketing agency is effectively closed, and all my effort and time now is on this podcast and on virtual events.
It's okay. I'll take over with gentle marketing, and
you're welcome to it.
If they're ready, you can send them my way. But if they're welcome to pushy marketing, I don't want them either.
don't want to know anymore.
No, but yeah, you're so right. It's once we know who we are, then that helps us in business because we can stand up for our values. Otherwise, we don't.
Well, that's another thing. That comes out as well. In some of the course material we're creating around the project, and it's taking time to put this stuff together. But values are very important. Very few people sit down to think about, what are my values? What are the 10 words or 20 words that really encapsulate what I believe and know to be true? For me, justice and freedom are very big words for me.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, but all this stuff takes time and effort.
It does. And that's why they don't teach it in, all these marketing programs. They go straight to your client avatar, because that's way easier. You just like, oh, he's 25 years old, he's divorced, no, not divorced, but he's single, and it's like, yeah, those are the easy things. But let's start with yourself and dig a bit deeper, and that's not always easy.
No, it's not. It's not easy. No, this journey isn't easy. But that's the point. It is a journey. And one thing which is very clear from the 150 conversations I have had is that you have to have opposition. There has to be resistance, because without resistance, life is meaningless.
Mm. Right.
And, I've said this on several podcasts, could you imagine going out to play a game of golf and hitting 18 single hole, whack down the first hole, whack down the second hole?
It'd be pretty boring, yeah.
I mean, could you imagine the frustration that would be at the end of it? Like you get at the end and they go, what was that for? What did I bother doing that for?
Maybe the first time it would be like, wow, that was different. But then you go back and you do it again, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, and it's the same as anything, isn't it? There has to be an element of mastery and stuff, and we have to kind of learn that process. And it's opposition. It's that resistance.
Yeah, and in a way, I think we've had easy for too long. And easy got us nowhere. Easy got us killing the planet and, killing the human relationships and all of that, because it was all easy. We just had, Facebook robots and chatbots and what else. It was easy. Yeah. But
I think it's going to be quite a difficult sell to get people to go back to hard. But I actually think, putting the marketing hat back on, I actually think it was easier 30 years ago. I think it was much easier. If I remember the company I first started working, they only had to do the yellow pages and a couple of magazine articles. Like they did a couple of magazine entries once a month and a couple of articles a year, like big articles that they would pay for once a year. And that was a £2 million business at that time, employing 30 people. And that was all the work advertising they needed to do. They didn't need to do anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that was easy.
That was easy. That was easy. They just said, we'll just do an article next month. Oh, yeah. We'll write it. I'll write it at lunchtime. It was that easy. Now, look at the amount of content material that every company now has to produce on a weekly basis, just to bloody stand still. Yeah. That's why I don't want to be in marketing.
Yeah. So in a way, what we're talking about, all of this is hard. Like, it's hard work. So how can we make it fun? Because hard work that is just difficult and, morbid.
Well, it depends if you want to get into marketing or not, really. And I don't want to. I mean, that's your territory. But
the questions. I'm talking about the questions.
At the end of the day, marketing is all about finding your ideal client and really finding a tight ideal client.
Let me do the marketing. I'm talking about the questions. Like, they are hard work. They're, it's hard.
No, I actually don't think they are. I think we know the answers to them. We just got to take the time to actually write them down and do them.
So how do we make it fun, though?
Well, I think it is fun. Once you suddenly, here's the thing, what you realize, if you start going back and looking back in time to like what you were passionate about as a child, what you were passionate about then, you can actually often find a straight line right the way through. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was always an entertainer. I was always the singer. I was always the one that was talk. I found my way back to podcasting. It took me bloody 50 years to do it, but I found my way back here. Mm-hmm. So, and I always enjoyed talking and meeting new. I was always talking to people when I was a child. Anyone, I would talk to anybody. And I was like, talk to strangers. Oh, he's a nice man. I mean, I was with her, but so like I would open conversations with people even then. So that's my passion. It's been right the way through my life.
Right. So connecting with who you were at 7 years old is fun. And I think you're right. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just kind of, playing the devil's advocate.
Well, you can. That's your job.
How can you make it fun?
But I think it is fun, but you've got to put the time in. But the rewards are enormous because, as I said, once you recognize these answers, once you know what success means, you can really measure what you're doing in life and then, well, hang on a minute, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I don't actually want to do this.
Yeah. Which brings us to the last question, which is, what is the meaning of life to you? So what is the meaning of life to you, Paul?
That is interesting one to answer because I don't think I have a real answer for it. And the answer to that is complicated, but all right, I'll wind us around there. So what I've come to realize is there is absolutely no meaning to life whatsoever.
Okay.
Other than the meaning that you choose to give it. That's the point, really. Organized religion gave us the meaning of life, the glorification of God. That was what they gave us. And all religions gave us that meaning. And once religion started to descend or move away of relevance in life, most people would call themselves something, but they're probably not as followers of it as now as they were as at my parents' age. So we all have to make up our own mind because the priest is no longer telling us, or whoever is no longer telling us what the meaning of it is. So we have to decide. Now, many people say it's love. Many people say it's helping others. Lots of people say it's helping others. It's doing things for others. And I don't know the answer. I don't really have a true answer. What I am interested in, I read a book a few weeks back by Perry Marshall. And I've followed Perry Marshall for nearly 20 years. And he's a top flight AdWords, magician, basically. He developed some of the early work on AdWords advertising. But he's always been an engineer. And he came up from a religious family. And he was fascinated by the evolution story. So fascinated by it as an engineer. He was going like, if evolution actually works the way they say it does, why can't we apply it to engineering? Why can't we make machines that make themselves better by progression? So he started to explore the story of evolution. And one thing he's come up with is that DNA is a code, but it could not have been created by itself. It could not have been made by anything or anyone on this plane of existence. It had to come from somewhere. And he has said, if you can prove it doesn't, happy to have the conversation with you. And he's put up a $10 million prize for anyone that can prove it isn't. If you can actually make a code that will self-produce and self-replicate in front of us, he will give you $10 million. And he's right in many respects, because if you get a blank sheet of paper and throw ink at it, you're not going to get the complete works of Shakespeare. No matter how many times you throw ink at that bit of paper, it's not going to form itself into words by accident. We created language, we created letters, we created numbers so that we could communicate things. Something created DNA so that life could be possible. Now,
to me, that I don't know another question, though.
Well, it does. I don't know what that means in terms of what to me it means is there is something outside of this plane of existence.
Okay.
That's what it means to me. And in terms of what my purpose is, I think it's up to me to choose. Life was created just to create life. Now let's see what happens. Cats don't think, oh gosh, what am I going to do today? What's the meaning of it all? Then just get on with it.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I'll make sure to put that book in the show notes as well. So can you say the author again? So
Perry Marshall, and it's called Evolution 2.0.
Okay. Interesting. It's not my cup of tea, but it might be someone else's who's listening.
Well, I don't know. And it's a very practical book. Just talked about all of the science. He's done tons of research, all of the science, all the experiments, even when they tried to experiment and make DNA work, tried to do it by breaking it. All it ever did was break stuff. It never actually made another animal.
Yeah. It's interesting, especially with all the genomics research and all of that's happening now with actually accessing the DNA.
It's getting mighty scary now. There's a thing called CRISPR, which is very scary. But hey,
scary and interesting at the same time, right? That's when change happens, when things are like, really, what are we doing here? So yeah. That will be a topic for another show, but I'm sure it will be a good point to come full circle and just maybe what you can say again is like how these questions really changed your life, because it sounds like that was the thing. It's like,
okay. So what happened for me was when I started asking the questions of other people, I got to realize that everybody was in a similar boat to me. At some point, they all had periods of time in their life, either where there was where they were in crisis, where they were possibly potentially suicidal, where there were all sorts of things, and they all found various ways of getting through it. But and there was no one answer to the question. There is no one answer to any of it. We're all unique individuals, and we all come up with our own story. But what I did realize is that everybody got through it. Everybody had opposition, had difficulty. Mm-hmm. And also, there's also this strange thing that the universe kind of helps out in some way. There's always something which is just out of earshot or eye shot, which kind of goes, do this, do that, go here. And sometimes it's a quiet voice inside. It's the quiet intuition inside us saying, go this way, go that way. Yeah. So I think there's a lot to be said for starting to listen to yourself, listen to what you want, and put the time in. Give yourself the time to really understand your own desires.
Wonderful. Tell us again what the name of the podcast is and where can people find you and find out more about you.
The podcast is called Life, Passion and Business. You can find it at lifepassionandbusiness.com. We put out 2 shows a week. One show is always a guest, and one show is always me rambling for 10 minutes. And I do some good rambling. I'm a good rambler.
You are.
No, I mean, I always put out a Sunday podcast. So it's just 10 minutes. And often it's me talking about something I'm working on this week, something which has come to me this week.
I used to do those. I called them Muse episodes. Yeah.
And it's nice to do them. I quite enjoy doing them, actually.
Yeah.
And it shows my fallibility. So I'm
that's great.
I'm just as flapping around as everybody else in this conversation. That's the point of it.
I also have one last question that I ask all my guests, and that is, what are you grateful for today or this week?
Gosh, what am I grateful for today? There is all so much. I'm grateful for my running at the moment. I'm really enjoying being fit and healthy as I have ever been, because I'm doing a lot more running. So I'm really enjoying that. And I'm enjoying the fact that I do set aside time for myself. I do make myself the priority. That's what I'm grateful for. And that I have the capacity to do that.
Yeah. I think.
Oh, there's so much. Gosh, I'm so grateful that I get guests like you on my podcast and I come and talk on yours. I'm grateful for the fact that I'm being chased by people to get on the podcast. You know, it's like wonderful. Yeah. Life is fantastic. It's great. And and I have my challenges. We all do. I have oh my God, did that happen? Oh, okay.
You're grateful for those too, right?
Absolutely. Now, the phrase for those is called, you have gratitude for the good bits.
Right.
And you have gratitude for the shit bits.
I've never heard that before. Good one.
Anyway.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. All the best.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Paul. And why don't you take a moment to reflect on these questions for you and your business? Paul has an ebook that might help you. It's an ebook and worksheets. You can get that at lifepassionandbusiness.com/the 5 questions. And his main website is also lifebusinessandpassion.com. You'll find the show notes of this episode with further links at sarahsanacroce.com/GBR95, and I'll link to those resources in there as well. And remember, don't forget to send me an email to sarah@sarahsanacroce.com if you'd like to join us for free on this month's Circle Call on July 14th. Next week's episode is about the P of personal power, and I'll be speaking to Heather Thorkelson about reframing your relationship to failure. So make sure to tune back in next week, and in the meantime, let's be the change we want to see in the world. Speak soon.